Good evening, and welcome to Christmas Eve at Northminster. We are so thrilled that all of you are here, whether you're here in person or joining us on the live stream. We anticipate there's probably a few more of you on the live stream than there would have been about 5 days ago. And that's okay. Tonight we are reminded, as the poet Madeleine L'Ingle tells us, that God did not wait until it was the perfect night, the perfect time to break into the world. But rather, God came when it was the right time. We gather in this time, but we gather carefully tonight, remembering the one who is the light of the world. We gather with additional precautions. Our normal air ventilation system is set to turn over the air 3.5 times an hour. It's currently set to turn it over 4 times an hour. The windows are open, and we are being pretty strict tonight on enforcing masks and things like that. And everyone tonight in the service who removes a mask to speak in worship has tested negative today. So we have engaged in a number of precautions. You'll hear more about some precautions as we move through the rest of the service. But on this night, we begin a service of worship, and it is our practice to begin our worship services here at the font, normally pouring water in to remind us all of our common identity. But tonight, we don't. We wait, because this is coming a little more than 2 weeks from now on Baptism of the Lord Sunday. Tonight is about rehearsing God breaking into the world in a new way. So come with us, journey with us to the Nativity tonight. Let us worship God together. And we invite you to stand if you feel called and are able. Sorry about that.
We gather tonight to celebrate and rehearse something miraculous and mysterious.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come.
After tonight, we need no longer fear. God is reaching across the chasm of time and space to enter human life, earthly time, reminding us that each life, each era of earthly time are precious to God. Emboldened, we light the candle of hope.
Let earth receive her pain.
In words and violence across the globe, we war with one another and with ourselves over who is right, who is powerful, who is in charge. Tonight, the angels remind us that the ultimate authority rests with the author of time, who is coming as the Prince of Peace, willing us to live in justice, harmony, and unity. Relieved, we light a candle of peace.
Let every heart prepare him room.
Mary's sighs of pain and Joseph's fears for her give way to rejoicing as the angels' promises to each of them are fulfilled in the "I am here" cry to the newborn child of promise. And so we light the candles of joy.
And heaven and nature sing.
And at last we celebrate that divine love never fails. It transforms all who receive it and all who share it. Tonight we light the candle of love, because tonight love is born for all.
And heaven and nature sing.
Amen.
seated. We have spent, many of us, a lot of time in A Christmas Carol over the course of the last 4 weeks. Some of you maybe you've read ahead, but tomorrow your email will include most of Stave 5, the Christmas part. Tonight we have 2 portions of that section of A Christmas Carol. Scrooge has just purchased the goose for the Cratchits, and then he dressed himself all in his best and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded every one with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir, a Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. He went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted the children on the head and questioned beggars and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything could give him so much happiness.
Good evening. I invite you to stand as you feel called and as you're able, and join me in our acknowledgement of our need of grace. God of stable and stars, of light and hope and new life, open our eyes and hearts to your presence in our world. Forgive our obsessions with power and possessions. Forgive our compromises and narrowness of vision. As you tear down the veil between heaven and earth and humble yourself into a dusty cowshed, the child of oppressed refugees, tear down the walls we have built of fear, despair, and arrogance. Open us to your grace, that we might hear again the song of the angels, and respond with lives that sing out your refrain of peace, compassion, and goodwill. Amen. Friends, the unquenchable light of grace is born into the world this night in the form of a little child. As the forgiven and released children of God, let us have newborn's purity, an infant's love, a baby's joy. Let us follow this child with hope and courage. This night, no one is a stranger. All are joined here as one family through the miracle of the birth of one small child. Let us share our joy and excitement at being here this night as we celebrate God reaching down to touch the earth. With our eyes and our words, keeping our COVID protocols, let us reach out to one another in love incarnate. The peace of Jesus Christ be with you.
And also with you.
Let us share the signs of peace. Peace, everybody. Peace, peace. Peace, Myron. I invite you to hear with fresh ears Luke 2, chapters 1 through 20. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. In that region there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Then the angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among those whom he favors." When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them.
The old ways of seeing the world are transformed by the light of love, breaking into the world this night. Nevermore will we fear that shadows and death will have the final say. For the dawn draws near, and the world is about to turn.
So in his novels, Charles Dickens would frequently fill in the blanks in his story with a letter that one character would write to another. He never does that in A Christmas Carol, but I wonder tonight if we can't imagine what that might have been like if he had done that. A potential addition to Stave 5. Mr. and Mrs. Fred Hollywell, December 25th, 1843. My dearest Fred and Lily, just moments ago I arrived at home from your lavish celebration, and let me begin by thanking you again for your hospitality this day and welcoming me to your home for your Christmas celebration. Lily, your family is so clever, particularly at the word games. It was good of you to include me. Fred, as the evening wore on, you were kind enough to ask what brought on my new spirit of Christmas, for which I'm so very grateful. I told you a longer explanation would have to wait until I could tell you a ghost story or three. And what a jolly laugh you gave me when you said, "Bring on such ghosts to make everyone merry." And that's so true. But there's something I wanted to share with you tonight. The experiences I will relate to you over a steaming bowl sometime soon I will not go into here, other than to say that I have experienced a visitation of a kind that helped me see the error of my ways. I did not know how to describe the experience until this morning, when, inspired by the Spirit, I went to church. I'm ashamed to tell you it was the first time I'd been willingly in far too long. But as I sat there and the music washed over me, there was a calm, a peace I have not known since I was a boy. As the lector read the story of the holy parents, the shepherds, and another holy visitation, suddenly it came to me. Fred, you may think I'm bound for Bedlam, but I believe that I have experienced angelic visitation, or something close to it. I'm sure you recall what the angel said in Bethlehem. "Fear not, for I bring you good tidings of great joy for all the people." That phrase kept echoing in me, my boy, and it is what motivates my letter to you tonight. I could not let another sleep go by until I paid homage to your mother, to her love for me. I hate to admit it, Fred, but it was a love I refused to trust. And that was almost my eternal undoing. You see, when I was growing up, it was only Fan, Father, and me. Mother having died giving birth. Father resented me. I think now my presence was just too painful for him. He had known me my whole life, and Fan had a bit of the brother worship about her, just as I had a bit of the sister worship about her. But not enough, it seems. I know now that I took Father's rejection of me as the more trustworthy of emotions over Fan's love. Since he would not or could not love me, not that I could tell it, I grew to distrust love itself. The love of my sister and the love of that eternal Father whose love I assumed was just like my Father's. The Father whose love I didn't trust was not just my own, but the Father and Mother of us all, the maker of the stars, the author of life itself. This morning I heard the story of another Father, a Father who was willing to take on God's Son as his own, and the story of a mother who would take on shame and rejection to be the mother of God on earth. And as I heard their story, I realized something else. Not trusting love had created a vast empty place within me, a place that I filled with fear. Fear of love, fear of rejection, and the resentment that that fear created. All of those feelings crowded out the love of the one who could have been my wife, crowded out the love of my sister and my love for her, and so poisoned the blessing that would have been loving you and your family all these years. The only thing there was room for in my heart, the only value I could see in the world was in things, coin, property, and I supposed the fear I could inspire in others. Sadly, you experienced far too much of the latter in me. And again, I beg your pardon. The rector this morning spoke of the coming of the Christ child as love, the greatest love that has ever been, breaking into the world, breaking down the walls erected by sin and evil. And again, my dear fellow, as he said the words, it was as though I was in my visitations again. But this time, not seeing chains, but walls I had erected that divided me from you, from the companionship of others, and from the respite and joy of the companionship of that little baby born in Bethlehem. How remarkable it was in the span of just one night to see again your mother's love for me, to see the echoes of it in your kind entreaties over the years to create a place in my heart for you and your dear wife. You know of my clerk, Bob Cratchit, Fred, when I think of the ways I have treated him, of the ways I tried to have our relationship be based only on fear and not on respect, or the recognition that that child of Bethlehem came for him and for his dear family as much as he came for me, it fair breaks my heart again and again. But perhaps that is what it needed, dear boy. My cold and calcified heart needed breaking. For so long I sought to bury it in the pain of the past, and so buried my humanity, buried the very idea that I could bear the image of God as much as any woman or man. And so as I sat in church this morning, Fred, I felt that angel before the shepherds to be visiting me as surely as those visitors who haunted my dreams last night. The angelic words, "Fear not," broke open all that was left of the old Ebenezer and revealed a heart that was in desperate need of filling. And let the words of the angels begin to fill it, my boy, just as my lessons of last night had finally let you and your sainted mother back in. Let in Bob's family, let in even the memory of my sad and pathetic father. And then the choristers began to respond to the curate's words. And they sang, "Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King, let every heart prepare him." And that's when I knew I had been with angels last night, Fred, for that is what they did for me. They worked with me so that my heart could prepare him room, could make space to trust the love of that Son of Mary, to make space for, oh, so much more than I ever thought possible. Fred, I know that times are hard for you right now. I know that things have not gone as you had hoped in so many ways. And I look around this fair city and I see so many others for whom that is also true. Those without the dignity of work, those who have no place to live, those who are sickened by disease, or those who fear. Fred, I'm asking you to help me help them. I have turned away in fear and disgust so many times. Help me turn towards those I see you caring for all the time, those who were dear to your mother's heart as well. I said I want to live with the spirit of Christmas in my heart. And dearest boy, I know now that that spirit is the selfsame spirit who came among us all those years ago, not in my dreams, but in a stable in Bethlehem. If you will but stand by my side, dear boy, we can become instruments of his love and grace. Is there any more joyous way we could live the spirit of Christmas throughout the year? Again, all my love to you and Lily, and may this be the first of our joyful Christmases together. With a transformed heart, filled with joy, your chastened and grateful uncle, Ebenezer.
Angels
You may be seated. This is the time in our service when we would traditionally give you the opportunity, by ushers coming forward and passing plates through the aisles, a chance to respond with our financial resources to the love that God has given us this night and every night. We're not doing that in order to be safe as well, but you do have the invitation tonight as we prepare to listen to this glorious arrangement of Joy to the World, to consider the ways in which the joy that comes into the world this night inspires you, inspires each of us to use the gifts that we have for the betterment of all, for the furtherance of God's kingdom. If you want to respond financially, you have the ability to do that. There are plates in the back and 2 boxes, one just inside that door and one on the bench out in the back here, where you can do that at the end of the service. But we also invite you tonight to consider the other gifts that you have: your time, your concern, your prayers, all the different ways you can use the gifts you have for the breaking in of the kingdom that is born anew tonight. Let us consider how each of us is called to respond together. Another one of our traditions on Christmas Eve is to light candles, to sing Silent Night and somehow together juggle our hymnals and our candles and not set one another on fire, but it always ends with us having to blow them out, something we're not supposed to be doing these days. And so tonight we have our lights. We have the ability to turn them on and off. Tonight, we also have the gift of being able to listen to Silent Night, not having to juggle those hymnals, but to let the words of this beautiful cradle song welcome us into this season of Christmas. I invite you, as the song progresses, to turn your light on when you feel like it. And together, we will welcome the light of Christ into the world yet again tonight. So, whether you are a bearer of light or a needer of one who needs the light, he was born tonight for you. Whether you are one who has to be broken open still, or one who has been broken open, all can prepare our hearts and welcome in the one that is the light. Whether we're an Ebenezer or a Fred, or somewhere in between, we are invited to claim the light and take it with us tonight. And you are invited to claim the light and take it with you tonight. One bit of information for you, for those of you who were contemplating you might be also here in church on Sunday. We have heeded the invitation of the Evanston Health Department, and this will be our last worship service with all of us gathered together in December. Our service on Sunday will be live streamed, but without folks in the pews. So join us for that service on Sunday morning on Facebook or YouTube. Friends, let us go into the world and let our lights shine, knowing that it is not our light at all, but it is the light of the one who lit the universe into being, the light of the Christ who even now is transforming each of us, and the light of the Spirit that will warm each of us in every moment so that we can always know that we are never alone. And all God's people said, Amen. Christmas.